Hey everyone, welcome back to Tow for Drives, where today we are getting our first snow of the season, and I am thankful that our 2024 Porsche Cayenne Turbo Coupe is fitted with some Yokohama snow tires for our video today. We're going to take this Montego Blue Cayenne Coupe out on the road and show you what it's like to live with. And I've got to be honest, this is a car that I was not super familiar with. For one, because I've never driven a Cayenne Turbo, and also the hottest Cayenne I had driven before this was the Cayenne S, so nothing really in this caliber. But I have driven the Lamborghini Urus, the Audi SQ8, the Bentley Bentayga. This was kind of the last one on the list for me to experience, and boy, has it stolen my heart. I've been having such a good week with this thing. I've been so excited to show you guys what this thing is all about. So let's go ahead and quickly go over this. Well, it looks like the snow picks up a little bit here, but I think it really complements this beautiful Montego Blue exterior paint color on the Cayenne Turbo Coupe. So if you're unfamiliar like me, let's go ahead and run through what we have here in front of us. So every Cayenne Turbo now is an e-hybrid, meaning it is a plug-in, but there's a big but here. Under the hood, we still have the 4-liter twin turbocharged V8, which on its own makes 591 horsepower, but with the help of the electric motor in this, combined power output 729 horsepower and 700 pound-feet of torque, meaning this thing can boing off the line and hit 60 in about 3.5 seconds. Keen-eyed viewers will also notice that this Cayenne Turbo Coupe is equipped with the lightweight sport package, which gives us a ton of things, as it should, for its $13,000 add-on. And the coolest thing you get here, well, there's actually two things I think are the coolest that you get. For one are these 22-inch GT design wheels, as well as the center exit exhaust that you get on the Cayenne Turbo GT. So in a way, this is kind of like a more daily drivable Cayenne Turbo GT. It has the looks, it's got the sport design bumpers, it's got the wheel arch extensions in black, it's got the wheels. This one has carbon ceramic brakes, and once we come around to the back here, you can see we have this center exit exhaust. Now, this is slightly different than the titanium exhaust you get on the Turbo GT, but it does still sound fantastic. I cannot believe a hybrid car sounds the way that this one does. It is absolutely nuts. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. But I think overall, the looks of this thing are absolutely nailed. I didn't always like these coupe SUV architectures, the BMW X6, the GLE Coupe, the Cayenne Coupe, the Audi Q8. I thought they were all a bit silly, but after living with this one and seeing it, it's starting to make a bit more sense to me, just from kind of an aesthetic point of view. And especially, I mean, how many people that buy SUVs these days actually use the cargo space anyways, especially a Porsche Cayenne. Okay, it's starting to pick up snowing a bit, so let's poke around this while we still can. In the back here, you can see we do actually have a pretty decent amount of room. Here's our charging cable for our plug-in hybrid system. It just comes with a level 1 charger like we saw in the regular Cayenne e-hybrid. We do have some additional things. We have some additional things under the floor. I was going to say storage, but that's just a bunch of tech for our hybrid stuff, as well as our Bose sound system. This is what has been sliding around back here all week. Let's tuck that in so it doesn't do that for our video. All right, let's shut this. The EPA claims this Cayenne Turbo e-hybrid will go just over 20 miles on a full charge, but I've been seeing numbers from 42 to 43 miles after plugging this thing in all night at my house. So I think the real world number is a little bit higher than what the EPA claims. Ooh, door handle's covered in ice. Okay. There are 3 very cool things that you get with the lightweight sport package, and I forgot to mention one of them, but we'll go ahead and go over that now. You get these houndstooth sport seats, which look even more excellent up in the front, but I don't want to get ahead of myself yet. These are an especially cool option because you can't get these on the Cayenne Turbo GT. These are exclusive to a Cayenne Turbo with the lightweight sport package. So these are kind of like a strong cloth material. They call it houndstooth in silver. And if you know me, you know I love a good retro throwback, and this reminds me of Porsches of the past, excellent Porsches of the past. And also, my buddy Sean has some Pasha inserts on his Cayman GT4, and I think that just makes the car look so much nicer. So big fan of houndstooth. In Porsches, we also have a fold-down armrest with some cup holders, and being that this is a coupe, obviously headroom is slightly limited in the back, but at 5'11", behind myself here, I can fully extend even with the camera on my face, and my head does not touch the ceiling. You can see we have an Alcantara headliner, or Race-Tex as Porsche calls it. That's a part of our lightweight sport package as well. You do honestly get a lot for your $13,000. I know I've joked about there are only 3 cool things, but there's a lot of stuff. And of course, we'll have that all down in the description, as we do with all of the Porsches that we test, because usually they have lots of options that are pretty much impossible to memorize all of them. Up front, you can see a couple differences there as well. But before we get up there, let's pop the hood and show you this 4-liter V8. It is still snowing, but also sunny at the same time. That's cool. Just want to remind you all again, 729 horsepower. And hand slipped off the latch there, and again. And you can't really see much. You can see your couple little intake tubes going in there, but then there's just this big engine cover that prevents you from seeing the real business end of this, but that's okay. I'm sure most Cayenne owners take their car to the dealers anyways for service, but sometimes I like to see a cool engine bay design. This one does not really have that. And while we were on the topic of options, while we're still on the outside of the car for just a little bit longer, I want to go over some acronyms that this car is equipped with. Obviously, we have the PASM, but we also have PDCC, and then we have the PCCB brakes. I think I got that right. So air suspension, dynamic chassis control, and carbon ceramic brakes. This is equipped with all of those. Cayenne Turbo Coupe starts around 150 grand. This one Aspect is 190 grand. So about $40,000 in options. This is a 24. The price has gone up slightly for 2025. I built this exact car in the configurator in 2025 dollars, and it was over 200 grand. So price has gone up a little bit. And we also have rear axle steering on this. Almost every Cayenne press car that I've driven has had rear axle steering. It's an option that they like to show off, and it's an option that I quite enjoy. So you can see up front here, excellent sport seats. Love, love, love this houndstooth. I think it just brings the whole interior together so well. We also get this GT Sport steering wheel wrapped in Race-Tex with our lightweight sport package. And while this looks absolutely epic, I would not always suggest you go with a Race-Tex or a Suede or an Alcantara, whatever you want to call it, steering wheel for daily driving use. But I'll tell you what, in this particular setting, since it's freezing out and since this has a heated steering wheel, it's fantastic. This kind of cloth, since it's a cloth more so than it is a leather, it heats up a lot faster and nicer, and it holds its heat. And when you're going around corners also, it doesn't get slimy from your clammy hands. So I do like this. They just wear out kind of fast. You can see this car's only got 4,700 miles on it, and the steering wheel is already getting kind of matted down and does need a cleaning. So just something to consider if you are going to be daily driving your car. Up here, the Cayenne is actually a pretty practical package. We just got out of the Audi SQ8, kind of a sister car to this. And one thing I did not like about that was there was genuinely nowhere to put anything. The center console was so shallow, and it only had 2 cup holders up front for drinks. That was just about it. In the Cayenne, you get this little cubby here. You can put stuff. You have this hideaway pocket here, which shows 2 USB-C ports, as well as a wireless charger. You can stick your phone in there to charge while you are running your wireless CarPlay or Android Auto. And then your center console actually has some room. I mean, it's still decently shallow, but more room than the Audi Q8, so I would call that a win. We still have our typical Cayenne grab handles here if you're doing some off-roading. If you're pulling some crazy G's in a corner, your passenger can hold on to the handles here. You get carbon trim with this lightweight sport package in this car as well. Leather wrapped dashboard. And we also get a carbon fiber roof, which is almost kind of a double bubble design you can see there. This is the thing with Porsches. I always like study the sheet before I make the video, and I'm like, oh, it has this option, this option, this option, $40,000 worth, and it's a little bit hard to keep track, which is why I like to always put them in the description. Right now the car is on, but we are running on electricity only. But if I twist my drive mode selector into the sport mode, you'll be able to hear this 4-liter V8 come to life. I purposely ran this in ICE mode on the way here so we'd have a little bit of heat in this engine so we could do our little spirited section, let you hear the V8, and then shut it down for when we jump onto the highway. We are commuting into town. I also have to stop at the grocery store, so it'll be kind of a commute, kind of a living with video with this Cayenne Turbo Coupe today. Overall, hopefully gives you a good idea of what it's like to daily drive this thing. Let's give it a couple revs while we're stationary. Give you a little sneak preview of what we have to look forward to on our test loop. This is the rowdiest exhaust I have ever heard on a hybrid vehicle. And what I love so much about some of these new hybrids is that they aren't solely to make the car more efficient. Of course they do. They allow you to drive large distances on electric only. It helps boost your average fuel economy. The Topher told me he was getting 50 miles to the gallon average when he was driving this car for a couple of days earlier this week. But the main purpose of this hybrid system is to boost the power. And being that this adds about 130 extra horsepower, I would say it's a good deal to put up with the hybrid. And you aren't sacrificing anything. I mean, it still sounds insane. It pulls like crazy, and it really just makes all the sense in the world. So that's enough. We've been sitting in the parking lot for way too long. Let's get this thing out on the road and see what it's like to drive. Of course, for 2024, the Cayenne is new. Some things have been switched around. Our climate panel has moved down slightly. Our shifter has moved up to the dashboard. As you can see here, 360 cam, reverse cam. And we're gonna start today in e-power mode. Show you what it's like to drive around in electric at first, and then we'll fire up the V8 and hit the spirited section. Lots of loud electric motor noise projected out as we ride in e-power. And this air suspension paired with this PDCC, is that right? The Dynamic Chassis Control, is an absolute treat for daily driving. Even on these 22-inch wheels, this thing is really quite cozy. And you know what's so funny about this too? This is, I think, the most comfortable Cayenne that I've ever lived with. I've lived with a base Cayenne, an e-hybrid, and an S, and this has been my favorite one to daily drive. It's almost like they made the steering a little bit lighter here, and the seats hug you in nicely. These sport seats, they feel very, very supportive. Now, all 729 horsepower and 700 pound-feet of torque is routed through an 8-speed automatic transmission to all 4 wheels, normal Cayenne stuff. And the electric motor sits kind of between the engine and transmission, which means when you're in EV mode like we are right now, you do still feel gear changes. It's a bit of a strange sensation, but there are lots of plug-in hybrid cars that behave like this, so it's nothing super new. All right, let's fire up this V8. I fear I'm going to be driving in sport mode for most of this video too, just because it's the best. Hold your shifter down for 2 seconds. Put you into manual mode. RIP Jag. And an absolute eruption of noise happens behind you. Oh. I'd say this thing is almost as obnoxious as the Lamborghini Urus we were driving this summer. And again, I just wasn't expecting that for a car that's obviously marketed as an e-hybrid. It's not a lie, but they didn't take any of the soul or pizzazz or raunchiness away from this car whatsoever. It is still unapologetically a Cayenne Turbo. We also have active aero. I don't know if you all can see that out of the puny little rear view mirror. This definitely could use a camera rear view. I don't know why for your 190 grand you don't get one. The theatrics of this car. That's what gets me. That's what motivates me to get out of bed in the morning, get in this car, and go drive it. And that's the most important thing for a daily driver. It should help you be excited to go and live your life, live your day. Listen to that. Okay, let's go ahead and do a launch control really quick. Show you guys how that works. I'm gonna put myself back into drive. I'm gonna put my PSM into sport, as you can see right there. Close out of these warning messages. And then I'm gonna put my drive mode selector into Sport Plus. Now it's as simple as full left foot brake, full right foot on the accelerator, and release brake. So, you guys ready? Here we go. Test those carbon ceramics. The V8 in this is just bewitching. I am having such a good time in this car. We've drained about 20 miles off of our fuel range and probably 3 miles of driving. Okay. You guys, it's so fast. And I'm glad that I've gotten to drive the Mercedes-AMG GT63 SE Performance as well as the new BMW M5 that kind of use this same formula. Powerful V8, plug-in hybrid, electric assist to make, high 700s up to 1,000 pound-feet of torque. But speed-wise, they all kind of feel the same. Let's put this back into, I'll leave it in sport. So, I don't think you'd have any issue keeping up with a G90 M5. The other thing here is this actually sounds the part. That AMG hybrid as well as the BMW M5, yes, they have V8s, but they aren't as obnoxious and rowdy as this Cayenne is, which is just nuts. It shows that Porsche does genuinely still care about the enthusiast, as that is essentially what their brand was founded on, so it makes sense, obviously. If I can get through the rest of this week without being arrested, I will be happy. Let's help that by going into hybrid mode as we merge onto the highway. All right, well, and we'll talk about practical things now that we are cruising here. So try not to get hit by any of the ice coming off of this truck in front of us. We'll get merged on. Hybrid mode is going to use this V8 a bit more, obviously, than it would in e-Power, as that only turns on if it's an emergency. But what I like about hybrid is you still have all the power, all the torque. It quiets down the exhaust. It closes that flap. And when you're cruising on the highway, once you let off the gas, it turns the V8 off completely. So you can, it's a nice balanced daily driver mode. All right, well, once we're on the highway, what's it like to actually sit in this Cayenne hybrid? Well, I'll tell you what. For one thing, I love the seating position. It kind of reminds me of old school SUVs, and I've always loved Cayennes for this, is they still feel like SUVs, even though they drive a lot like cars at this point. And not to mention, everything you touch in here is fantastic, from this Race-Tex steering wheel to the way that the sport seat hugs you in, like I mentioned earlier. Top of the door panel's leather, top of the dash leather. Elbow touch points, you've got a really kind of firm but squishy driver's side door panel. What I don't super love is that your armrest sits back pretty far. And what I liked about the Audi Q8 is that you could move that forward slightly and kind of set yourself up a bit better to float down the highway. In the Cayenne, it sits back kind of far. If you're a taller person, this will have no effect on you because you'll be sitting a few inches further back. I'm 5'11" and it's a little too far back for me. I think the biggest thing I'm surprised by is that we don't have any really road intrusion with these Yokohama snow and mud tires that are the OEM choice for a snow tire on the Porsche Cayenne. 285 section in the front, 315 in the rear. And not only are they quiet, they actually grip pretty well. You saw through those corners back there. I had no problem. Obviously, we're taking it easy today because the roads are, well, the highway's dry, but the roads back there were a little bit greasy, so we're taking it easy. But these do a great job. And you guys know how I mentioned earlier that the Cayenne steering in this turbo felt like the lightest out of all of them? I was just driving the Jetta GLI last week, a small little performance sedan, little compact car, and it had a pretty big dead zone with the steering. This Cayenne, and I'm trying not to freak out this Bronco Sport next to me, so we'll let him pass. This Cayenne, there's no dead zone at all. I mean, this is, you have no dead feel on center in this thing, and it just darts around. So, great daily driver, great performance car, and another thing. This is 190 grand as spec, starts at 150. The Turbo GT is $200,000 and it makes less power. Obviously it's lighter, it's a little bit faster to 60 by like 0.3 of a second or something. But this makes like 100 more horsepower or something than the Turbo GT. And I've never driven the Turbo GT, so I can't speak on it, but I'd imagine that this is more comfortable, and I'd bet you that it feels faster because you have the torque from that electric motor. I need to drive a Turbo GT, and I should call Tedward and ask his opinion, because I know he's driven one. He's got a video of one on his channel, so if you want to see that, go check that out. I'd suspect, though, that this would be the choice. I feel like it just makes the most sense from a daily driver standpoint. And I mean, what is a Cayenne if it's not a daily driver? You're not spending $200,000 on a Cayenne if you're not going to daily drive it, because why wouldn't you just have a 911 or a Cayman? I don't know. Everything in here is super usable, even though some of our buttons are haptic. Our temperature control, our fan speed, our controls to turn the AC on or off, it's all physical buttons down here. The infotainment, I've had no problems whatsoever this week with CarPlay. It's been fantastic. The navigation works really well. The ambient lighting's okay. It's definitely not best in class, but you gotta think, this is a Porsche. They're never necessarily set up to be the most comfortable cars in the world, even though this one is quite comfortable. You'd probably want to shop more for a Mercedes-Benz if you want to kind of drive like you're riding on a cloud. But what I love so much about this is it's very confidence-inspiring at speed. Sure, it's not as floaty as a Mercedes-Benz, but I don't really love that in a daily driver, because then you're kind of just wallowing all over the place on the highway. You don't really ever know what the front end of the car is doing. And this is just a very confident experience. Don't worry, I didn't forget where we're at right now. It sounds like a lion. Very raspy and angry V8. I want to reiterate, this is not the standard exhaust that you get on one of these. You have to either opt for the sports exhaust without the lightweight sport package, or if you select the $13,000 lightweight sport package, this does come with it. I noted that we have center mounted mufflers like you get on the Turbo GT, which do look very cool. but they do delete a couple of things. You're no longer able to fit a tow hitch, and you lose the kick sensor to load things in the back. So if you're somebody that often has your hands full, maybe consider not getting this package. Or if you're somebody that tows, that would be impossible for you. And if you are somebody that tows, note that this thing can tow almost 7,000 pounds. I think it's like 6,600 or something like that. So plenty for your GT3 RS and a trailer. It could do that with no problem. Let's go back into drive here for the grocery store parking lot. Maneuverability, obviously, fantastic. Super quick steering rack, but not so quick that you kind of lose a sense of what the car is doing. Love the steering feel, love the rear wheel steering, love the overall size of this. It's just a very nice placeable package. These parking cameras are great as well. See, park button is on the dashboard. And to shut the car off, we have a button. I am a little disappointed that Porsche got rid of the switch for 2024. Obviously, you guys have heard this in my other Porsche Cayenne reviews, so I'm sorry about that. But I miss my traditional Porsche things. Come on, you give us the throwback seats. Why not leave the ignition switch in here? I don't know. Well, let's jump out. You can see I can open my door all the way here in this spot. And it's really not an obnoxious size. I mean, it fits in a parking spot just fine. It's not too long. You can see parked next to the Chevy Blazer, it's kind of just about the same size. Now, Porsche doesn't make anything bigger than this unless you were to count just the regular Cayenne with the hatchback. But you really don't lose a ton of room with these coupe SUVs. So unless you are every time using up to literally the roof of your car with storage, I mean, you'll probably be just fine with one of these coupe SUVs. I don't really think you'll have too much of a problem. Let's lock it with our key. We also have 4-door proxy key in this, so you could lock it with your thumb as well if that is what you preferred. But cool. All right, well, we're gonna leave it out here. We're gonna run into the store and grab some groceries, and then we'll wrap up at the parking structure. Only one bag of groceries today, so we won't be testing the true cargo capacity of the Cayenne Coupe, but we may as well show you what this grocery bag looks like in the back of this thing. Obviously, power lift gate, and you can see the space that we showed you earlier, but just for scale, there is a grocery bag. Now, like I said earlier, I feel like you don't really lose a ton with these coupes, and if this charging cable wasn't in here, you could probably fit about 10 of these bags very comfortably back here. So in an effort to not have this fall over, we're actually not going to put it back there. And since this Cayenne Coupe has rear proxy key, I can walk up to the back here and the rear doors will unlock. Actually, that wasn't locked that time, so let's actually lock it to demonstrate that. See those mirrors folded in. I can walk up to this, put my hand on the rear door handle, and it will open. Rear proxy key is such an underrated option, I swear. And we're just gonna stick the grocery bag right behind the driver's seat. Forgot to mention, it has soft closed doors as well. Also, in all these new Cayennes, when you get in, it turns the ignition on automatically. So everything lights up, but obviously it's not on. You can see our check engine lights illuminated, all the stuff. And then you are responsible for starting it the rest of the way. So just an interesting little tidbit there. So let's get this Cayenne out of the parking lot, but first I'm going to turn my heated steering wheel on, I'm going to turn my heated seat on, I'm going to turn our temp up, just slightly turn our vent speed up. So we have this physical volume knob down by our climate control, but then we also have this physical slider on the steering wheel. Two good physical choices to adjust your volume. Now this Bose sound system, we've heard it a million times at this point, and it's a good system. Obviously it's not up to par with the nice Burmester systems in the Mercedes-Benzes, the Bowers and Wilkins in the BMWs, but I would say it strikes pretty even with a Harman Kardon in a BMW, or maybe a lower model Burmester in a lower model Mercedes, which is why I really want to hear the Burmester in one of these, but I've never been able to, maybe someday. The Cayenne does not feel huge as some other SUVs do in this particular section, and I love this air suspension. I think Porsche does air suspension the best out of anybody. And as I said earlier, it's not as cushy as a Mercedes, but it feels more dialed in. It feels more real. It feels natural. You don't feel like you're compensating for anything in this Cayenne. You can still feel that road surface through the wheel. I spent some time in the regular Cayenne e-hybrid and I was really not a fan of the brake pedal, but obviously this is a completely different setup, having these carbon ceramic brakes, and the brake pedal itself is a lot more natural feeling in this Cayenne Turbo e-hybrid than it is in the regular car, which is a little bit confusing. I just chalk it up to like the fact that this has carbon ceramics, so you have a little bit more bite up top. But the brake pedal does feel a lot better. Throttle response, very, very natural communication there. This is one of the most natural driving hybrids I've ever lived with. Even the transition from electric to gas, when you're in hybrid mode, it's seamless, you don't feel it kicking on. I was a little worried when I drove the regular Cayenne hybrid because that car didn't really feel that refined. And this turbo, it just does. Granted, it's about $70,000 more expensive than the regular hybrid, but or at least the one that I drove. I think base to base it's like 50 grand more or something. But you get that high-end experience here. And this feels like a car that is an entire caliber higher than just the base Cayenne e-hybrid. And that's important.
Please select an event from Welcome.
Because you don't want to be spending $150,000 minimum, thank you Ticketman, on a car that feels like it's the $100,000 version with a V8 slapped in and turbo written on the back. This feels like a more upscale experience, and I think that has to do with just the way that all of your inputs are tuned on this car. The materials that you touch in the interior are a lot nicer, and it all makes this very, very nice cohesive package that makes you think, okay, this was worth it. This is the proper daily driver. Even the base Cayennes, they still drive like a Porsche, but this Cayenne Turbo drives even more like a Porsche. And if you're somebody that's looking for a daily driver that's around $200,000 and you don't want to go for a Lamborghini Urus or a slightly used Bentley Bentayga, this would be a very good choice. Oh my goodness, it's covered in snow up here. Haha, cool. We can do a little bit of a snow traction test on these snow tires. Why not? Let's see how it gets off the line here in sport. And oh my goodness, we should have been listening to this exhaust in the parking structure. What am I doing? Okay, we're postponing this for a second just to back up slightly. Very important research must be done right now. Yep, that's the stuff. Okay, let's test our traction here. Put our PSM into sport. Yeah, no problem at all. You can see traction control cutting in slightly there. It'll let you slip a little bit. Okay, let's park this before I crash a $200,000 Porsche. Cool. Well, you guys, it's been a great few days living with this 2024 Porsche Cayenne Turbo e-hybrid Coupe, which is such a long name, which is why I've just been calling it the Cayenne Turbo. But I love this thing. I think it's the best Cayenne that I've driven, the best Cayenne that I've lived with, despite it being a coupe, despite it being somewhat thirsty when it's in its ICE mode, but the 40 some odd miles of electric range certainly helps you be a little bit more efficient. I love the houndstooth seats. I love the seating position. I love what this car stands for. And it does show that you're a bit more of an enthusiast if you select this as your daily driver over some of the lower trim Cayennes. Plus, it's super fast. It drives really nice. Love the steering. Love the suspension. And I mean, if you can just get past the $150,000 starting price, then you'll be in pretty good shape here. Looking forward to driving the Turbo GT, but for right now, this is the one to have, in my opinion. Why with both walkarounds has it been a complete whiteout? I don't know, but we're going to brave it to give you one last look at this thing. Sweet. Cool, guys. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about what it's been like to live with this thing. Well, that'll wrap it up for us today. We will see ya in the next one. Take care.